Minnesota Twins named Joe Ryan their opening spring training starter against Boston on Saturday. Here's how he can make up for the absence of Pablo Lopez.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Twins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm CJ Baumgartner, Twins writer for Zone Coverage and lifelong Twins fan just like you. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today, we look at the Minnesota Twins shortstop depth charts. We also look at Andrew Chafin and why he is the ultimate bullpen vibes guy. But first, we take a look at Joe Ryan, who Derek Shelton named the Twins starter for the opening spring training game. He hasn't quite named an opening day starter, but let's all be honest. That guy's going to be Joe Ryan. The injury to Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan is definitely going to be that guy who will be making the start, barring injury, on opening day. And so let's take a look now, because we know Joe Ryan is good. We know Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez were going to create a 1-2 punch in this rotation that was going to be very, very good. And now Pablo Lopez is gone, and Joe Ryan is put in a pretty familiar position, which is, hey, Joe Ryan, you want to lead our pitching staff real quick? Because if you remember, in 2021, he didn't really lead anything. He just kind of got there, made a good first impression. But in 2022, Sonny Gray was there. But in a way, Joe Ryan already had to lead because he and Sonny Gray pretty much had to salvage the rotation, because it was, Dylan Bundy and Chris Archer and some of these names where Joe Ryan even admitted later, like after the season, like, yeah, I kind of felt like if me and Sonny didn't have great starts, we weren't going to win again until we got back through the rotation. And I'm paraphrasing, but essentially that's what he said, is like, we were scuffling at the end of 2022. And if I didn't have a good start, we might not win until I pitch again. And that was the vibe. And it definitely was true. And he also had that same boat in 2024 and in 2025, especially with Pablo Lopez being injured. So there is this thing that the Twins have had to worry about, or Joe Ryan has had to worry about, which is that he has to anchor the rotation. So it's not unfamiliar territory with Joe Ryan, but it is unfamiliar in the sense of he typically did have Pablo Lopez. He always had Sonny Gray or Pablo, one of the two, to help him out throughout the rotation. And in 2023, he had both, right? And so that's when you look, and now you go, Joe Ryan's #1. It's Joe Ryan. It's Bailey Ober. It's probably Simeon Woods Richardson. It's some combination of Mick Abel, Zebby Matthews, David Festa, Taj Bradley, Kendry Rojas. Throw them all together in a pot and see which one comes out on top. But Joe Ryan is going to have to lead this rotation. And how is he going to do that? What are the things that can make him that? Does he have the capability to do that? And the answer is yes, but there's one thing he does have to improve on. But I do want to say, I know that we all know Joe Ryan is good, but I want to just give you some reassuring numbers for why Joe Ryan is an ace pitcher. And with Sonny Gray, he didn't have to be one. With Pablo Lopez, he didn't have to be one. Pablo Lopez is out. Sonny Gray is gone. Joe Ryan has to be the ace for the Minnesota Twins. And the good news is he has the makeup of an ace, not just the eye test, the makeup. If you want to look at Joe Ryan's career, he's at a 3.79 ERA, an ERA plus of 111, which it's ERA plus, basically Baseball Reference's version of OPS plus, which is again on a 100 is average scale. Joe Ryan has been an above average pitcher his entire career. 1.4 home runs per 9, 10.1 strikeouts per 9 innings, 2.1 walks per 9 innings, 3.82 fielding independent pitching, which again on an ERA scale, and averaging his fastball at 92.8 miles an hour, which is for sure the weaker part of his game. But as we've talked about before on previous shows, he makes up for it by having really good extension, but even though he doesn't throw the fastball as hard as other guys, he locate, he knows how to have movement on it, and he'll give up home runs from time to time because he pitches up in the zone and he doesn't have that tremendous heat. But at the end of the day, he still generates a lot of swing and miss for somebody who doesn't throw hard and somebody who gets a lot of strikeouts. So you kind of take the good with the bad in that situation. Let's compare him to Pablo Lopez, because I still think Pablo Lopez is better than Joe Ryan, but the gap isn't wide, right? They're pretty comparable. Pablo Lopez, 3.68 ERA, 116 ERA plus. This is over the course of his Twins career. 1.1 home run per 9, 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, 2.2 walks per 9, a 3.44 fielding independent pitching, so a little bit better than Ryan's, and throws the fastball a couple miles an hour harder with a 94.9 mile-per-hour average fastball velocity, again, over the course of 2023 to 2025 in Pablo Lopez's Twins tenure, and Joe Ryan from 2021 to 2025 with his entire major league career in a Twins uniform. The production hasn't been an issue for Ryan when you look at the bulk of his season-wide compilation, right? You look at the big data, the sample size, and you think, okay, that's an above average, nice starting pitcher, ace caliber, not like dominant ace on any staff, but certainly a very good starting pitcher for the Twins. But this is the thing about Joe Ryan he has to fix. Every year, Joe Ryan starts out strong and then has finishes that don't mirror his start. Now, one of the biggest examples, right, if you look at the splits, Joe Ryan has a 3.62 ERA in the first half of seasons compared to a 4.71 ERA in the second halves of seasons, has pitched about half the amount of innings in the second half of seasons over his career than he has in the first half. And obviously, you look at 2023, he had some injuries that he battled with and missed most of the second half. So that definitely plays into it. But the point stands of Joe Ryan in the first half of seasons is a dominant starting pitcher. It's why he didn't make an all-star game in 2023 or 2024, but he certainly pitched to an all-star caliber level. And then in the second half of seasons, he pitches like a guy you don't want on your playoff rotation, as evidenced by the fact that the Twins really tried to hide Joe Ryan when they made the playoffs in 2023. It was Pablo Lopez, it was Sonny Gray, and it was Bailey Ober, Joe Ryan kind of mix matching together. But the point was is they didn't really trust Joe Ryan. And in the playoffs, when things went weird quickly for Joe, they got him off there. Now, that was a few years ago now. Joe has certainly gotten better as a pitcher, but you have to figure out how to balance that second half of seasons. And again, you could look and say, well, that sample size got messed up because Joe Ryan was pitching hurt for that time in 2023 before he missed all those innings. But that just kind of adds to the case a little bit that he couldn't keep himself, that he couldn't stay healthy. Again, it's not, injuries aren't his fault. Injuries happen. But what was his fault was not telling the Twins training staff that he had a groin pull. And that's what caused him to give up like 20 home runs in like 4 starts. It was unreal. And it definitely ballooned his ERA in 2024 or 2023, excuse me. But Joe Ryan has gotten better every single season. It maybe doesn't show up in the exact ERA numbers, but if you watch, Joe Ryan has done a better job pitching later into seasons each year he's gone on in his career. And again, if you take out 2023, missed a good chunk of the second half. 2024, missed from the All-Star break pretty much to the end of the season. Again, he needs to do a better job of finishing seasons. He needs to find a way to unlock that level. But once he does figure that out, the Minnesota Twins are going to be in great shape. Once he does find a way to stay healthy, I think he will break through. And the same thing with Byron Buxton, right? He can't stay healthy until he does. And then he puts together a couple really nice seasons for Byron Buxton. So this isn't to say Joe Ryan's being a baby, and that's why he pitches bad in the second half. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Joe Ryan just hasn't found a way to stay healthy over the grind of a 162-game Major League Baseball season where he's, expected to make 30-plus starts a year. How he can navigate and find a better way to keep himself healthy will be the big question. But if he does that, there is no question that Joe Ryan can pitch a good, full, healthy season and be productive. for the Minnesota Twins because he has to be an anchor, not an aide anymore on this pitching staff. He has to be the ace, and he has to find a way to stay healthy if he wants a chance to compete with the Twins in 2026. And he has the potential to get there. And if he avoids wearing down in the second half, the production in the second half can meet where it is in the first half. But this is the most pressure that Joe Ryan has ever had on himself because there is no Pablo, there is no Sonny Gray to kind of help be that ace. There's Bailey Ober, but I think we all know, as much as we all like Bailey Ober, that Joe Ryan is significantly more productive and better than Bailey Ober. And there is more pressure on Joe Ryan also from a contract standpoint. He's another year closer to free agency. He'll be a free agent after 2027. And with the trade rumors swirling about him last year and through the offseason, what makes you think they're going to go away if the Twins aren't in contention? So even if Joe Ryan isn't pitching to keep the Twins in contention, he's pitching for other teams to want to go get him. So there is a lot for Joe Ryan to have to think about through season, but I think he does have the stuff. It's as simple as he's got to find a way to be productive in the second half of seasons. He's got to find a way to stay healthy in the second half of seasons because most of his issues in the second half have just related to him wearing down over the course of a season. And if he can figure that out, the Twins will have an ace that won't be Pablo level, but will certainly fill up most of the void that Pablo Lopez leaves. All right, well, we are going to take a look at Andrew Chafin, who's your bullpen vibes guy. He's had a couple great quotes already in his time in spring training in Fort Myers and the Twins shortstop depth chart. Is there any true actual shortstop that could please step up? Because I don't know if we got one. We're going to talk about all that and more after this. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Everybody loves futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can your pick cash, but it also could send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost to the NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Baseball is back, and you can lock in by joining the Everydayer Club, which gets you ad-free episodes and access to our group chat on Discord. For the next week or so, you can use the code SPRING for a free month. Go to lockedontwins.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. That promo code is SPRING. All right, so Andrew Chafin is going to be important for the Twins bullpen, even if he's not going to be the highest leverage person. He signed a minor league deal with the Twins, but I think there's a pretty open lane for him to make the opening day bullpen out of spring training. It's weird. We've usually expected the Twins to have like one or two lefties, and we're probably going to see it. We're going to have at least two with Funderburk and Rogers, but we could potentially get more with Bonda. We could potentially get more with Chafin. We have a couple others in the mix as well. This is all of a sudden a very 50-50 split between the lefties and the righties in this Twins bullpen. Andrew Chafin could find himself a role in that, as we've mentioned before on the show last week. He could be that Caleb Thielbar, Danny Colomb role where you're the first lefty we use out of the pen. I think Rogers fit that Thielbar role better given age, but I think the Twins are going to ask him to pitch in high leverage. It would not be the thing I would do, but it's what they're going to do. And so Andrew Chafin. I think it's Chafin. I go back and forth on it because every report I hear has one person say one thing, one on the other. So until I get a proper pronunciation guide, it's Chafin. So Chafin is going to be having a chance to earn that Caleb Thielbar role and have a chance to just be that first lefty out of the pen. You're coming in the sixth inning. Sometimes you're coming in the eighth. You don't really have a defined role other than when we need you to come in, you got to come in. And he mainly pitched in lower leverage spots. He only pitched in 33 and 2/3 innings last year. Did have a 2.41 ERA, so definitely a positive sign. And I think he can just find a role that way, if any, on the bullpen. I don't think you're going to want him pitching in the 8th inning in a tie game, bases loaded, 1 out. But I think in the 6th inning, Simeon Woods Richardson goes 5, third time through the lineup coming up. There's a couple lefties that are due up. Boom, put Andrew Chafin in, comes to pitch the 6th inning. Then you have your 7, 8, 9 guys all still lined up. I think that's the situation where you could see Chafin have that success. So there I did it again, going back and forth. Chafin had some interesting quotes in his first Minnesota media availability. He mentioned, I mentioned that he's a fun interview, right? Like I said before, this is a dude who's got the Fu Manchu. He's got the long hair. He basically is if you go to Pokemon evolution, like Randy Dobnak is like the standard, and then Chafin is like the Charizard or whatever. He's like the final evolution. Like this is where you get. I don't know what the pre-evolution would be, but you get my point. That's where he is sitting right now for the Twins, and he's just overall as good clubhouse vibes that you want. He had a great quote that said, "I know how to get guys out, and the computer doesn't understand." Talking about his free agency, saying, "Oh, he's frustrated. He thought he'd get more interest, and relievers just aren't a hot commodity." And he kind of fell through the cracks, and he took a deal with the Twins because, let's be honest, the Twins will give him the best chance to make a major league roster with the bullpen being wide open. He also talked about how young guys know how to throw it hard and don't know what to do with it just yet. He says, "I don't throw hard, but I know where to locate and I know where to put my spots." And honestly, that's very true. That's why he has success. Some of the young guys come up and throw hard, but they leave pitches out over the zone. You don't know how to locate it. You don't know how to control it. So you walk too many guys. And even though Chafin doesn't have the speed that he used to, he does at least know where to locate, can get his spots. But again, he also had a high walk rate. So you take where you get it. But with Chafin, I think overall he has a path here with the Twins to be a useful member on this bullpen, get a lot of opportunities. And if the Twins aren't good, he gets shipped at the deadline to a contender like he does every single year. He got traded from Washington to Texas. He's gotten traded, I think, from the Tigers. He got traded a couple years ago to one of the contenders. I want to say it was like Philadelphia or New York or some or another. I think he got traded to the Angels a couple years ago. So there's a lot of movement that he has had trying to find these postseason spots. But he's a guy that you can count on in that Caleb Thielbar role. He likely isn't going to be the team's most prominent reliever, but he can be a vibes guy. He can be somebody that does show up for the young guys. If you remember last year, the Twins bullpen, they had dudes that were chugging Red Bulls. I think Louis Varland was leading that charge. They were chugging Red Bulls before they had to go out and make their start. So they were hyping each other up or doing these things that every bullpen does, but you need those. You need those celebrations. You need those clubhouse things to be able to kind of keep you together, especially, of course, a long season and a season that might not be good, not just for the team, but especially this bullpen. How can you keep everybody and keep the good vibes together to keep everybody up during those times? And I think having a guy like Chafin does help out in that sense and does allow you just a clubhouse presence, even if he isn't the best reliever in your bullpen. He still has to produce. I'm not saying you leave him on there if he's got an 8 ERA because he's got vibes. But at the end of the day, you do need a guy who can replace some of those clubhouse vibes. And he seems like a dude also that the fan base can appreciate. I think the quote, obviously, if I know how to get guys out and the computer doesn't understand, resonates with some fans. The dude looks like a walking country music song. Like he's somebody that the fans can look at and be like, look at this guy out here throwing. Randy Dobnak kind of had that same vibe, right? With like, oh, hey, I know the Uber driver thing was like back in 2019, but he definitely had the long hair and the mustache and all that kind of stuff where you're like, that looks like a regular dude out there having fun playing baseball. And I think that there will be a big segment of the fan base that can appreciate a dude just coming out there and balling like that and looking the way he does. And I think that overall that could help keep a team and a fan base motivated throughout a bad season. But that being said, he's got to pitch more than 33 and a half innings, most likely over the course of a season. So how does that ERA stay up? I'm not quite sure, but I think he does have a very good track to make the major league bullpen in a very low leverage role, but also a very important role, even if the games aren't always super important. The situations aren't super important that he's coming into. It still is important to go in, pitch a clean inning, whether it's mop-up duty or just keeping the train on the tracks or whatever it is. And I still think that there can be a role for Chafin in this mix, because I think that he can fill that bar role, be clubhouse presence, keep a team and a fan base motivated in what could be a not great season for the Minnesota Twins. We're going to wrap up the show by talking about the shortstop situation, and if we have our shortstop in the future of Brooks Lee, if Kaelen Culpepper can come up, what is there if neither of those two guys are ready? We talk about all that after this. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listener show will sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Shortstop. It's Brooks Lee's. Brooks Lee is going to be the Twins' opening day shortstop, barring injury. That feels pretty certain. Even if other prospects or other guys have a better spring, this is Brooks Lee's job to lose. But that being said, if we're looking defensively, if we're just looking at the overall job security that Brooks Lee has, this probably is the Twins' weakest infield spot. You can maybe say first base, but you can always find Josh Bells and you can always find league average first baseman in free agency pretty quickly. So if you want to look at just shortstops, Carlos Correa didn't live up to the big contract he had in Minnesota. That being said, Carlos Correa was not an unproductive player during his time in Minnesota, especially defensively. There was just a safety net you had at shortstop with Carlos Correa defensively that you do not have anymore. And I really like Brooks Lee, and I think there is a turnaround capability for Brooks Lee. I'm not as high on him as I was now that I have, about a season and a half of sample size for Brooks Lee. But that being said, Brooks Lee was always pitched to me as a high floor, low ceiling type of player. He's not going to hit 25 plus home runs and hit for 300 and steal bases. He's not the Royce Lewis type of talent. But what you got in Brooks Lee was a baseball player. You got a dude that could show up and know how to hit and know what to do and just kind of go about his game. And even if he wasn't the most spectacular, he'd be fundamentally sound. He'd do all the right things, and he would just get himself to be good enough to be a nice above average MLB player. And that hasn't quite materialized yet for Brooks Lee. And at shortstop, especially, the longer he plays at shortstop, the more we realize he just doesn't have the range to become that big league shortstop every day. He can fill in at times, be a backup, be a platoon, whatever. But an everyday shortstop defensively doesn't feel like the right spot for Brooks Lee. He's been a negative in terms of outs above average at shortstop over the last couple seasons, and he needs to find a way to be able to either improve the range or just do a better job of making the plays in front of him and just be really elite at that. But the range has been an issue. He can't quite get the balls deep in the hole. And there's a couple positions where range isn't as important, but shortstop definitely is one of them because you're deep in the hole. You're the reason between doubles and singles, the reason between singles and ground outs. There's a lot of things that a shortstop does need to be responsible for and have some range and the capability to do. And it's why Correa could make the plays that could get to him, and he was still elite at doing that, but he was not elite anymore at the range and getting to some of those ground balls deep in the hole that he used to. But for Brooks Lee, at the end of the day, you can deal with meh shortstop play if you can hit. Think of Jorge Polanco in 2018, 2019. Like the Jorge Polanco shortstop era, he was never a great defensive shortstop, but he could hit. And so that's why you put up with it up until he throws an error in a playoff game. And I'm still mad at the 2020 postseason, but whatever. If you look at Brooks Lee, it's the situation of he can hit the ball, but he hasn't been able to really drive it. He hasn't been able to hit the ball for power. He has an OPS, which is on base plus slugging, of under 700, which is not good. And especially when you look as a switch hitter, he can't really be dynamic against either one. He's a switch hitter that hit 677 against lefties and 643 against righties. Now, I'm not saying that he needs to commit to one or the other, but he's got to be better at one of them. You got to at least have a plus 700 OPS at one of them if you want to stick in the big leagues. He's hit fastballs extremely well. He's like a +7, +8 against fastballs. He knows what to do there. Sliders, been a big issue. Changeups, been an issue. He's got to find a way to hit those off-speed pitches, not breaking pitches so much. He's been okay against the curveballs, but those off-speed pitches, the sliders, how can you handle those? Because he hasn't been able to do that. He hasn't necessarily been that free swinger. I think he's discerning enough, although he doesn't walk, he doesn't strike out. So he puts the ball in play a ton, but it's weak contact. It's weak contact on the ground, weak contact in the air. He's okay at pulling the ball in the air, but could be better at it. The thing about Brooks Lee is it's been a lot of weak contact, a lot of pop-ups, a lot of ground balls right to second base. And yeah, he doesn't strike out, but what good is striking out if you hit a pop-up a mile in the air to the first baseman? Again, aesthetically, strikeouts are bad, but how much worse are they to some of that? I agree with people when they say they want less strikeouts. I want less strikeouts too. That being said, less strikeouts for the sake of less strikeouts doesn't necessarily mean anything. But looking at Brooks Lee, I think he is the Twins' incumbent shortstop. I think it is his job to lose. And I think there's really nobody that's going to overtake him, even if he does struggle. So he would have to struggle pretty hard to lose that shortstop job. You could move Royce Lewis back there if things get weird, but honestly, I wouldn't touch Royce unless you had to. Let him stay at third base. As we talked about on yesterday's show, go and listen to it. Royce Lewis turned himself into a nice defensive third baseman. Why send him to shortstop? We just had the last couple of years learning to play third base. Let him stay there. Let Royce stay at third. But if you have to, you could always move him there, I guess. Although I don't really know how much of an option that is for him anymore. You have Ryan Kreidler, who's a depth piece, waiver claim from the Tigers. Again, has to find a way to hit, as we've talked about the last couple of days. Orlando Arcia, we mentioned on yesterday's show. It's actually been not great defensive shortstop last year. Was a -1 outs above average. Better than Brooks Lee, but like not that much better. Orlando Arcia had a 202 batting average and a 545 OPS. Yeah, that ain't going to cut it outside of just being a fill-in guy. Tanner Schobel, we talked about yesterday, nice prospect, but it's kind of fallen off over the last couple of years. The prospect list, he's off the top 30. Tristan Gray could play some shortstop. He was in a plus fielder at shortstop, and I think you see Tristan Gray in a lot of those backup shortstop days where Brooks Lee needs a break. You just put Tristan Gray in there. Obviously, you can really platoon because Brooks Lee is a switch hitter, but he's an option. You could have a backup. The real answer are the prospects coming up. You have Kaelen Culpepper. There's Merrick Huston, who was the Twins' first-round draft pick last year. It'd be pretty aggressive to see him come up to the major leagues, but there's a small chance. For Kaelen Culpepper, he finished the year in Double-A. He'll likely start the year in Triple-A, but in Double-A, he had a 285 batting average, an 827 OPS, and 11 home runs over 59 games. Very solid. Of course, you expect when you go each level up that the production will dip, but how much, if any? And that could let us know what Culpepper can do. He's not going to be the biggest power hitter in the world, but he is a guy that can rip doubles, high contact, and he's got some speed, can play shortstop, could potentially move to third base or corner outfield in the future. But right now, doesn't profile necessarily for Culpepper, even though he is right now a shortstop. He doesn't necessarily profile as one long-term, which is the same thing about Brooks Lee, which was the same thing about Royce Lewis. Doesn't really profile as a shortstop long-term. Doesn't really profile as a shortstop long-term. Kaelen Culpepper doesn't really profile as a shortstop long-term. Merrick Huston, I think, does. From the early scouting reports, from the early access we have gotten to him last year, he's been a guy that shows a little bit more of a capability to play shortstop. But that being said, there's plenty of time. Kaelen Culpepper could turn it around. Brooks Lee could turn it around. For Brooks Lee, got a harder chance believing it now that we have more of a major league sample size, but he still could. There's a chance he could turn that around. There's a chance Kaelen Culpepper could find a way to become again, you don't have to be an elite shortstop, as we've learned with the Twins. They will take average to even below average fielding at one of the most important positions defensively in baseball if you can hit. And if they can hit, you'll find a way to do that. If Brooks Lee doesn't hit, Kaelen Culpepper, there's a chance he could come up at some point this season. It's not a guarantee. It's not as much of a guarantee as a Walker Jenkins or an Emmanuel Rodriguez, but there is a non-zero chance and a very good chance that he'll get to AAA and do some damage and just at least make a case for being called up. Now, again, he's got to hit AAA. If he goes to AAA and struggles the first months, well, now that kind of sets the clock back a little bit. But that's where the Twins shortstop situation looks like. Again, there's a little bit of depth there for some minor league guys, Gray, Creedler, and with Arcia. You could also throw in Gio Urshela in that mix, but I don't think he's a shortstop anymore. I barely think he's a third baseman at this point. And I love Gio, great clubhouse guy, but his age has definitely been showing the last couple seasons. So just to recap it all, Brooks Lee is the shortstop position for now, but it might not be a very long experiment with him there, especially if Culpepper or heck, even if Merrick Huston has a big season. All right. Well, thanks for tuning into today's Locked On Twins. On Monday, we'll break down storylines from spring training, whatever breaking news inevitably happens over the weekend. Take a look at second base. Is that Luke Keeshaw's position to lose? Or is Cody Clemens going to platoon with him all year long? Make sure you subscribe and follow to Locked On Twins so you get all the latest episodes. You can find me on X at BombCJ30. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Twins ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedontwins.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen of the day is Locked On MLB. I'm CJ Baumgartner. See ya.